Hi there, and thanks for joining us. You're watching the Pension Life Bulletin.
CWM Fraudster Jody Smart.
And I just know I'm going to reach the stars, and that's where I'm aiming for, and that's all I can say, really.
Jody Smart of Continental Wealth Management in Spain has been found guilty of fraud in the Alicante Criminal Court. The judge found that she was responsible for deliberately swindling £370,000 out of two victims, Tim and Sally. A third victim, who lost £800,000 in the same way, sadly passed away several years ago, so his complaint was not heard along with the other two. Ironically, Jody and the rest of the gang at CWM, along with Stephen Ward of Premier Pension Solutions, has escaped prosecution in the simultaneous criminal trial in the Denia Criminal Court. This has been for £100 million fraud committed against 1,000 victims, represented by 17 individual lead complainants. In the Alicante court proceedings, Jody Smart, aka Bell and Pearson, was originally listed as defendant alongside her accomplices, Alan Gorringe, company secretary of CWM, and Patrick Kirby. However, Alan Gorringe died and Patrick Kirby was let off. Former fashion designer, swimming pool cleaner, porn model, would-be actress.
What the fuck happened to you?
Stood alone in the dock, convicted of continuous crimes of swindling, fraud, and misappropriation. Also mentioned in the judgment were the crimes of obtaining an illicit financial benefit for the company and for herself. The court heard that in 2017, Jody convinced one victim, Tim, to pay £299,000 with the false promise that the money would be used to buy him a house on the Costa Blanca, where he intended to retire. Tim was instructed to pay £99,000 to CWM and £200,000 to Christine Walker, wife of a CWM employee, Eddie Walker. But when Tim went to sign for the purchase of the house, he was asked for more money and informed that the money he'd originally paid was lost. He therefore lost both the house and his £299,000 investment. Also, in 2017, Jody gave the other complainant, Sally, a job as an admin assistant, but Jody also conned her into lending €70,000 to the company with the promise that the loan would be repaid in 12 monthly installments plus interest, totaling €75,600. However, as the company was on the brink of failure anyway, Sally was sacked by Jody a month later and informed that CWM was closing. The loan was never repaid. In the Alicante court judgment, Jody, as the sole director of CWM, Continental Wealth Trust, was held criminally responsible for the crime of continuous fraud. In her attempt to evade prosecution, Jody tried to claim that it had been her partner, Darren Kirby, along with Alan Gorringe, company secretary, who had managed the day-to-day operations of the company, who were at fault. But the court ruled that this defense was inadmissible, as the sole director of the company cannot be exempted from the responsibility for the activities of said company, or exonerated from criminal liability.
Well, I don't agree with that.
The judge was fully aware that Jody had closed her eyes to the fraudulent activities of Darren Kirby and Alan Gorringe, but chose to ignore them because she was benefiting personally and succulently from Darren and Alan's activities. In summary, the judge decided that Jody had been fully aware that CWM was on the brink of failing and that neither Tim nor Sally would ever get their money back. The judge concluded that allegations of defense were inadmissible, as whoever assumes the position of sole administrator of the company cannot be exempted from the responsibilities for the activities of that company. The sole administrator of the company cannot exonerate herself from the responsibilities, including criminal liability, by granting powers of attorney to third parties, closing her eyes and looking the other way, unconcerned with the company's activity. The judge continued that Jody knew what the people she had empowered were doing, benefiting from the tricks they were up to. The sole director cannot close her eyes and let the person given power to represent the company do what he wants. The judge observed that Jody had enjoyed a succulent income while turning a blind eye to the activities of Alan Gorringe and Darren Kirby. She had been fully aware that the money paid by Sally and Tim would never be repaid. He also ruled that Jody had deliberately concealed this fact from both the victims. So this constituted swindling, deception, and clear fraud. Finding Jody guilty, the judge sentenced her to 4 years and 3 months in prison and ordered her to pay back the money swindled out of Tim and Sally Ann, £299,000 and €70,000, respectively, plus a further fine. But this is far from the end of the story. This trial only covered a tiny portion of the fraud perpetuated by Jody Smart and her various associates who were complicit in her crimes. In addition to defrauding Tim and Sally, Jody defrauded 998 other victims out of their pensions and life savings, leaving their lives in ruins. In the 2 years while CWM was finally collapsing into inevitable closure due to their crippling losses suffered by hundreds of the firm's clients, Jody paid herself at least €996,435.86 from one CWM bank account. In addition, CWM received a total of €3,391,876.28 in commissions which were concealed from their victims. This money came out of the investors' own money, and the only hint that Jody and CWM would receive these legal commissions was in the original client care document, which stated,
In most cases, we are remunerated by the institutions we place business with. The remuneration is typically paid by commission directly by the institution and recouped generally by annual management charges.
This is called a half-secret commission. There is no disclosure as to how much commission is paid and how this will affect the investor's portfolio performance, as this money comes from the investor's own funds. In addition, it is not explained that the only reason for the placing of a victim's money into an insurance bond is purely for the commission, as the bond in no way benefits the investor. Nor is it explained that every investment made is done so purely for the further commissions to be earned. So who else was complicit in Jody's and CWM's fraud? There's a long list. Darren Kirby, Shadow Director. Alan Gorange, Company Secretary. Dean Stodgstill, CWM Advisor and Salesman. Anthony Downs, CWM Advisor and Salesman. Neil Hathaway, CWM Advisor and Salesman. Stephen Ward, Premier Pension Solutions. Martin Ryan, Global Financial Options. Momentum Pensions, Malta. STM Pensions, Malta. Corinthian, Gibraltar. Pantheon, Gibraltar. Old Mutual International, Isle of Man and Ireland. Generali, Isle of Man and Ireland. SEB, Ireland, and many others. All directors of the above companies and more are also criminally liable for their part in Jody's and CWM's fraud. Jody is now bound to face further criminal charges, as it is clear that she was legally responsible for all CWM's frauds. Not just the case of the two complainants, Tim and Sally, who so determinedly, bravely, and successfully brought Jody Smart to justice.
That's all for now from the Pension Life Bulletin. For more information, please visit www.pension-life.com.